2 years ago, I lost my job, my house, and my marriage in the same month. I thought it was bad luck. Then I found out it wasn't luck at all. My best friend of 15 years and my boss had been working together to make sure I hit the bottom. And they almost got away with it. Almost. Let me paint you a picture of my life at 34, because you need to understand what was at stake. I had a wife named Rachel. We've been together since we were 22, married at 27, and I want Toby clear. This wasn't a we stayed together out of habit kind of marriage. We were genuinely, embarrassingly in love. The kind of couple that other couples slightly resented. We had a daughter named Zoe, 5 years old, obsessed with frogs and the color orange. We had a house in a good neighborhood. We had a plan. And I had a best friend. His name was Marcus. We'd met in college, freshman year, two idiots sharing a dorm room with one working outlet and zero life skills. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the first person he called when his dad died. 15 years. The kind of friendship where you stop saying, "Let me know if you need anything," and just show up. I also had a job I'd worked 12 years to build. Senior portfolio manager at a financial firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I was good at it. My boss, a man named Richard, had mentored me for most of those 12 years. I trusted him completely. He was the kind of person who gave you a firm handshake and looked you in the eye, and you just knew he meant what he said. I was wrong about Richard. I was catastrophically, humiliatingly wrong. It started with a rumor. Someone on my team, I still don't know who, told me that Richard had been in private meetings with the Chicago parent company about the upcoming restructure. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the name that kept coming up in those meetings as the person who wasn't a cultural fit for the new direction. That name was mine. I didn't believe it at first. I went straight to Richard. He looked me in the eye, that same firm, trustworthy look, and told me I had nothing to worry about. He said I was one of his most valuable people. He said the rumors were noise. I believed him. I went home that night, told Rachel there was nothing to worry about, and slept fine. 2 weeks later, I was called into a meeting at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Just me and Richard and an HR woman I'd never seen before. The HR woman had a folder. She slid a paper across the table and said, "We're eliminating your position effective immediately." I looked at Richard. He was looking at the table. He didn't look up once during the entire meeting. Not once. I drove home in silence. I sat in the driveway for 45 minutes. I remember it was still light out, and the neighbor's kid was riding a bike in circles on the sidewalk, and everything looked completely normal, and I couldn't understand how the world was still just going. I had just been erased from a job I'd given 12 years to, and the street looked exactly the same as it always did. I went inside and told Rachel. She held me while I fell apart in a way I hadn't fallen apart since my mother died. I'm not ashamed of that. Some hits are just too clean. Here's the thing about losing a job. If your marriage is solid, it survives. Lots of couples go through it. You tighten your budget, you lean on each other, you get through it. We'd been through hard things before. I was not worried about us, except something was wrong. I noticed it slowly, the way you notice a smell you can't quite place. Rachel was on her phone more than usual. She'd step out of the room to take calls. She started going to the gym at odd hours, not unusual on its own, but she'd been saying for months she was too busy to go at all. Little things. I told myself I was paranoid, that unemployment was making me insecure, that I was projecting. Then one night, I came home and found Marcus's jacket on the hook by the door. Not a big deal. He'd been over dozens of times. But Rachel had told me she was home alone with Zoe that evening. She'd specifically said that when I texted to say I was going to be back late. I walked into the kitchen. They were both there, normal, talking. Marcus laughed when he saw me and said he'd stop by to drop something off. Rachel said he'd ended up staying for dinner. Perfectly normal explanation. Perfectly reasonable. I sat with them for an hour, and something in my chest felt like a rock the whole time. I didn't say anything. I don't know why. Maybe I already knew and I wasn't ready. 3 weeks later, Rachel told me she wanted a separation. She said she hadn't been happy for a long time. She said she'd been feeling disconnected. She did not mention Marcus, not once. And God help me, I didn't ask. I was too gutted to ask. She took Zoe to her sister's place in Michigan. Temporarily, she said. I was alone in a house that still smelled like my family. With a mortgage I had no income to pay. In a city where my best friend had apparently been lying to my face for God knows how long. That was October. By November, I'd started to figure out just how deep this went. I found the emails by accident. I was helping Rachel move some things out of the house. We were still civil, still trying to be adults about it. And she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear to you I wasn't. I walked past it, and a name caught my eye on the screen. Richard, my ex-boss, in an email thread with my wife, dated 8 months before I was fired. I stood there and read the whole thing. It took about 4 minutes. Those were the longest 4 minutes of my life. Here is what I learned in those 4 minutes. Marcus had introduced Rachel to Richard at a company event she'd attended with me 2 years earlier. They had stayed in contact. At some point, I still don't know exactly when, Marcus told Richard that Rachel was unhappy in our marriage. Richard, who had been building a case to restructure my division anyway, decided that eliminating me would be convenient, a favor to Marcus, who was, by that point, apparently more than just my wife's friend. They hadn't conspired in some dramatic movie villain way. It was worse than that. It was casual, comfortable. The emails were friendly. Richard had written, at one point, something like, "Better for everyone this way." Just a throwaway line. Like my entire life was a scheduling problem they'd helped solve. I closed the laptop. I walked out of the house. I sat on the front steps, and I didn't move for a long time. Rachel came out eventually and asked if I was okay. I looked at her and said very quietly, "I read the emails." The color left her face completely. And right then, I knew everything I needed to know. The next 6 months were the ugliest of my life. I'm not going to sugarcoat them. The divorce was brutal. Not legally. We both wanted it to be clean for Zoe's sake. But emotionally brutal in a way that divorce always is when you find out the person you loved was living a parallel life you knew nothing about. I'd go to pick up Zoe on my weekends, and Marcus's car would sometimes be in the driveway. Those drives home, Zoe asleep in the back seat, me gripping the steering wheel, I don't have words for what those felt like. The house sold in January. I moved into an apartment that cost $750 a month because that's what I could afford. My career, which I'd spent 12 years building, had a crater-shaped gap in it that every interviewer wanted to know about. I told the truth, restructuring, and watched their faces do the math. I was 35, living in a studio, eating cereal for dinner more nights than I want to admit, and every single person I thought I could count on had either betrayed me or watched it happen. And then, and this is the part that I think about a lot, something very strange happened. I ran out of things to lose. When you've lost everything, there's a terrifying freedom in it. I know that sounds like a motivational poster, and I hate that it sounds like a motivational poster, but I don't know how else to say it. I had no image to protect, no lifestyle to maintain, no plan to fail. I was just a person in a small apartment with a 5-year-old who came on weekends and needed me to be okay, which meant I had to figure out how to actually be okay. I started therapy. Not because I wanted to, because I was out of other options. My therapist was a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Osei, who did not let me wallow, which I deeply resented for the first 3 months. She kept asking me what I wanted, and I kept saying I wanted my life back, and she kept saying that life is gone. What do you want now? It took a long time for that question to stop making me angry. Everything changed in March. I got a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize. His name was David Chien, and he was the head of a small financial advisory nonprofit in Cleveland. He'd found my profile, seen my background, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in consulting for them on a new financial literacy curriculum they were building for underserved communities. The pay he mentioned was roughly a third of what I used to make. I messaged back asking for more details, fully intending to say no. We got on a call. He described what they were trying to do: teach people in genuinely difficult financial situations how to protect themselves, build savings, understand the systems that were often designed to work against them. He was passionate in the way that makes you feel slightly embarrassed about not caring about things as much as you should. I said yes before the call was over. I still don't fully understand why, except that every other option felt like trying to rebuild the same life that had already collapsed once, and I was too tired for that. I moved to Cleveland in April. New city, new nobody. I threw myself into the work in the way you can only do when there's nothing else competing for your attention. I was sitting across from real people with real fear in their eyes, and I had something that could actually help them. And that combination turned out to be more motivating than any bonus structure I'd ever worked under. I was good at it. Really good. Within a year, the program had expanded to 3 additional partner organizations. David brought me on full time and gave me the program director title. I built a team. I trained people. I started speaking at conferences. And then, about 18 months in, I got a message from someone I recognized immediately. It was Richard. He'd seen a piece in a financial trade publication about the nonprofit's work. He wanted to reconnect. He said he thought about me often. He said he hoped there were no hard feelings. I read the message 3 times. I typed and deleted about 6 different responses. Then I forwarded the email thread, the one I'd photographed on Rachel's laptop, to the HR director of his current firm, the Chicago parent company he'd been so eager to impress, with a note explaining the context. I don't know exactly what happened after that. I heard through someone at the old firm that Richard had a difficult quarter. I heard he'd stepped back from his senior role. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. I'd been carrying that email thread for almost 2 years, and letting go of it felt like putting down something very heavy. As for Marcus, I haven't spoken to him since the day I walked out of my house after reading those emails. He reached out once, about a year later, with a long message that I read carefully and then archived without responding. There was nothing in it I needed. Here is what I want to tell you, and I want to say it without making it sound easier than it was. 2 people I trusted completely decided between them that my life was something they could rearrange for their own convenience. And for a while, for longer than I'd like to admit, they were right. They rearranged it. I hit the floor, hard, alone, in a $750 a month apartment, eating cereal and trying to hold it together for a 5-year-old who just wanted her dad to be okay. But here is the thing about hitting the floor. You find out very quickly what's actually yours. The job wasn't mine. It was a position. The house wasn't mine. It was a mortgage. Even parts of that life weren't really mine. They were built around a version of me I'd constructed to fit a plan I'd made when I was 22 and had no idea who I actually was. The work I do now is mine. The relationships I have, smaller, quieter, more honest, are mine. The version of my daughter who runs to me on weekends and tells me about frogs and doesn't see me as a stressed, distracted version of a man trying to maintain a lifestyle. She gets a better father than the one I was before. I know that. It doesn't make what happened okay, but it makes it mean something. Richard wanted to erase me quietly and move on. Marcus thought I'd be the collateral damage of someone else's choices. Neither of them counted on the fact that the floor, as brutal as it is actually solid ground. You can build from solid ground, and that's exactly what I did. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Sometimes the end of one chapter is just the beginning of something new. I hope my story reminds you that even when the ground seems to be slipping away, you're still standing on solid ground. Thank you for watching and for your time.